What is going on, FG3000? Back in the place to be, and welcome back to the mobile gaming tier list for the month of April and May. Mobile game releases are finally starting to pick up, so hopefully we can go back to doing this every single month. We have a lot of games to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right in, starting off with Shadow Bride. So Shadow Bride is basically an official, relaunched, reskinned version of Illusion Connect. Now at its core, I really don't have a problem with relaunching a game, taking all the things that you learned from your previous release and trying to make a better game the next time around. I don't have a problem with that, but I still feel like it needs to be more of a substantial step forward, like a 2.0 or like a 3.0 relaunch, something like that, not just a different coat of paint. And that's basically what Shadow Brides is. It's literally Illusion Connect with just a different coat of looty paint on top of it, which, might appeal to some. If you did like Illusion Connect, you're probably gonna like Shadow Brides if you wanted something a little bit more looty. But at the end of the day, even though this game is an official release, it feels a little bit more janky than Illusion Connect. It has really inconsistent art as well, and of course it still remains to be seen what type of mistakes they plan on avoiding, because they weren't really clear. They didn't really come out and say which mistakes they made with Illusion Connect that they're gonna avoid with Shadow Brides, so you really can't hold them accountable. Not to mention, here in 2022, this kind of gameplay style is starting to show its age a bit. So for me, Shadow Brides, that is going to be a C average. So the next game up is going to be Three Kingdoms Legends of War, and this was quite the surprise for me. Normally when you see these Three Kingdoms or these Dynasty or romancing style games, dude, they are so terrible. Like, there's just so many of them, and most of them are pretty bad. So I was very surprised to see how well this game played. Really solid graphics, effects, character models, waifus, brought to you by the Unreal Engine. Good amount of quality of life throughout the entire experience. This is a really solid, like, mindless hack and slash game. Probably gonna have a lot of competition because even right now Diablo Immortal is out right now, so if you want some mindless hack and slash, you're probably gonna go to Diablo Immortal because it's probably gonna be a better overall experience with more certainty in the longevity of the title. Because when it comes to Three Kingdoms, I've never heard of this developer before, so that kind of like, is this game really gonna be able to stand the test of time? Is it gonna get updates? There's a lot of question marks when it comes to that, and like I said, you now have options with Diablo Immortal, so it came at a bad time. I don't think it's a bad game. I do think it's solid. So for me, Three Kingdoms Legends of War is gonna get a C average. So the next game up is gonna be Seven Mortal Sins Ecstasy, a game that I've been playing every single day since launch. I really like this game. Some really amazing artworks, and believe it or not, I know you kind of look at the game and you're like, oh wow, it's just booba, right? But actually, this game has some of the most well-crafted and thematically like intertwined skill kits I've ever seen. Like, the characters and the animations and their skills just synergize so well. Super creative when it comes to the skill kits, like way more than this game has any right to be. But when you take a step back from the waifus and the tons and tons of free summons, like, dude, this game is Dopamine Simulator 2022, right? You take a step back from that and you kind of analyze the gameplay, there's not really much going on here. like to be real, the gameplay, not great. So for me, even Seven Mortal Sins, a game that I play every single day, I don't think it's any better than C average. So here we are, Nino Cooney Cross Worlds, the auto quest, auto path, auto grind, auto combat, auto play mobile MMO with a fantastic world, extremely likable characters, production value through the roof, content galore, and I have to say, by far, one of the lesser mentioned strengths of Nino Cooney is just how social this game is. By far, in my book, Nino Cooney Cross Worlds is the most sociable gacha game in existence right now. Like, most gacha games that we play are ultimately a really kind of lonely solo experience, not Nino Cooney Cross Worlds, right? Not only is in-game chat constantly popping, but find yourself in an active guild with a Discord, hunting down dungeons together, field bosses, world bosses, defending your kingdom, building your kingdom together, doing the social media wall posts. Like, dude, by far the most social mobile MMO in existence right now is Nino Cooney, and it's not even close. And I'm so glad, and some people might not like this, but I love the fact that you have one account name. No matter what alt you're playing, you're always the same exact person. That once again kind of drives the social aspect and kind of like a reputation. Like, you can actually build a name on your server. Like, real talk, the worst thing that I can say about Nino Cooney Cross Worlds is Netmarble, right? Like, the worst part of Nino Cooney Cross Worlds is by far Netmarble. Netmarble be the type of company that makes a character creation battle pass. I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't, right? This game has a login battle pass, a dungeon dungeon battle pass, a boss's battle pass. Like, dude, do you really need that many battle passes? Not to mention every single time you do literally anything in the game, Netmarble expects money. Like, hey, congratulations, welcome to level 20. Want to give us 20 bucks? No, Netmarble, I don't. Little brother bask in his glory for a second before you start reaching for his wallet. And that's before you even start talking about blockchains and NFTs, right? So yeah, Netmarble by far is the worst aspect of Nino Cooney Cross Worlds. I don't think the autoplay is the worst part. Like, I'm not gonna knock points off of Nino Cooney for being an autoplay MMO because that's what it set out to do. That was a purposeful design decision. For me, that's like knocking an idle game for being an idle game, or like knocking Arc Knights for being a tower defense game. An autoplay MMO is what it set out to do, so I'm not really going to take points away from that. You kind of make your own decisions on how important that is to you in your overall internal tier list, okay? And the same exact thing when it comes to monetization as well, right? So Netmarble might drop your score all the way to the don't category, and that's totally fair. Like, I feel ya. But for me, when it comes to my tier list, I'm going to try my best to focus on the game itself. And I can't in good conscience look at a game that is presented and polished this well with this much content any less than an A. And like I said, I totally get it. For you, Netmarble might drop this all the way down to the don't category. Like, I feel you, I understand. And overall, it just really depends on how you feel about autoplay MMOs, how tolerant you are to constant like money pop-ups. Like, that's really gonna change the score for a lot of people, I feel. But from a gameplay standpoint, I think it's an A with some definite rooms for improvement. I wish there was a little bit more customization on your skill kit when it comes to combat. I don't like the gender lock classes at all. And there's some gameplay modes that I feel are just like needlessly tacked on, like the adventure mode just seems like it's set up for NFT combat and stuff like that. Like, there's definitely some room for improvement, but the foundation here, and like I said, the social aspect is unmatched. Nino Cooney, for me, it's an A. So the next game up is going to be Echoes of Magic, another game very similar to Three Kingdoms that I feel like is going to be kind of lost with Diablo Immortal being here. I feel like the hack and slash itch is going to be scratched elsewhere. But Echoes of Mana is an okay action RPG with this really strange quirk where it's auto chess meets action RPG. So every floor in a dungeon, you can either buy new abilities, sell old abilities, combine abilities to make them stronger, in a very similar style to auto chess, but I don't think it makes the game any better at all. It still feels like an action RPG, right? So they kind of went out of their way to make this auto chess system, but I don't think it makes the game any better at all. It doesn't make the game worse, but it feels like a gimmick that maybe sounded good on paper, but in execution, it doesn't really bring much to the game. So for me, I'm actually gonna go ahead and give this one a D, below average, because although it's not terrible by any means, the main gimmick, the main attraction, isn't really attractive at all, and it's so integral to the entire experience, and I just think there's just way better options out there. So the next game up is gonna be Queen's Blade Unlimited Limit Break. Basically, this game is a looty idle game with just over monetization and just red dots all over the screen. So for me, just based off of that fact alone, right, the red dots and the crazy monetization is gonna make it a worse game than Idle Huntresses, which I put in the D category. But from a gameplay standpoint, they're very similar. And this is not to say that Idle Huntress does not have terrible monetization as well. That game is super expensive for no reason, but just the terrible UI and the red dots all over the place. Like, this game is a browser game, right? Wait, it's a browser game. Why do I have this on my list? I just thought about that. Why do I have this game on my tier list? Oh well, it's there now. That's an F. Next up is Echoes of Mana, action RPG set in the Mana franchise. Music-wise, story-wise, the whole aesthetic I think is solid. I think the combat ultimately fails, and for an action RPG, that's one of the most important things that you have to nail. Some of the weapons do not feel fun to use at all. Pretty much all the abilities in the game root you in place. It's very stiff. The AI is atrocious. Loading screens out the wazoo, just in places that don't make sense, that ultimately just kind of burn you out. Very grindy by nature, and honestly, I feel like the Mana franchise as a hero collector doesn't really lend itself long-term for a gacha game, in my opinion. They're probably gonna have to bust out with a lot of collabs, or a lot of characters wearing different outfits, or a lot of characters doing double or triple duty within rarities, things of that nature. So when you have an action RPG and you don't nail the combat, I think right off the bat, you're already kind of underwater. Not to mention all the other things that I mentioned. With the load times and the very limited IP, I gotta give Echoes of Mana that D, below average. Next up is gonna be Disklight, a game that I'm literally playing right now. Playing, air quotes, right? Disklight, amazing soundtrack. Between this game and Nino Cooney, I'm not sure which game has the better soundtrack. And now we're starting to see what we can expect from this game as a live service. We have a fantastically well done event. We have guild battles. We also have 2 icons in the game that are, coming soon. So the content is starting to flow, because before this event dropped, this game was basically just grind for relics all day long. So that makes this game very similar to a game like Ace, because it's all about trying to build the most efficient and speedy farm teams as you battle bosses and elemental specific type encounters. Like, they're very similar in that sense, but I think ultimately Disklight wins when it comes to the production and the overall polish of the title. So I'm gonna be a little forward looking on this one. I'm gonna give Disklight an A. So very similar to what I was just talking about when it comes to Nino Cooney, monetization for you might drop a game like Disklight once again all the way down to the don't category, right? And this is outside the whole drama with the pity on the Osiris banner. Disklight was already a really stingy game when it came to giving out currency and summons and things of that nature. So monetization definitely could be a sticking point for you. And like I said, monetization alone might make you drop it all the way down to like the don't category. But if we take it back to a pure gameplay perspective, between the art direction, the character design, the soundtrack, the polish, the aesthetic, the level of effort, the marketing department, right? That's also important, bringing in a ton of money to be able to do bigger things than other games. So yes, the game does have less content than Ace, but long term, I think the future is brighter with Disklight. So next up we have Soul Tide, a game that basically exists in a category all by itself as a more puzzle-driven gacha waifu collector. And once again, to kind of repeat what I said earlier, I'm not gonna take points away from a game that does what it set out to do, right? So for some people, it being a puzzle-based gacha game is an absolute deal breaker. I don't think it deserves to lose points for that, because that was a purposeful decision. Like, that is the game they set out to make, was a puzzle-based gacha game. So with that, once again, this is a game that exists in a category all by itself. However, I do think the game does have a few design decisions that ultimately hold it back. I don't think the game benefits from having that first-person perspective where you can't see your characters, especially in the gacha environment that we're in right now, where, collecting characters and outfits is so important. I think it was a really bad move overall, because it double niched this title, right? So it was already a niche game being a puzzle gacha. Now you have this weird first-person perspective camera angle in combat where you can't see your characters. So now it's double niched, and that really limits the longevity of the title, right? It's fine to be niche, but when you have these games that are games as a service, the game being around, right? The game having longevity is a factor that you have to consider as well. So I don't think they did themselves any favors by double niching themselves, and they really didn't even take advantage of that, because, like I said in my first impressions video, they have all this dead space in combat. Why not make the enemies bigger then, right? If you're not gonna have a focal point on the waifus and your characters, why not make the enemies more of a big thing, right? Look at Destiny Child. Some of those boss encounters that you fight are just like crazy, right? So maybe go that route. So I think all those missed opportunities kind of limit Soul Tide in the C category as average. Still pretty good game, and I still recommend it. It's the only game of its type, and if you're looking for a game where you can get, more gameplay per stamina, Soul Tide absolutely is the game that you should look at. One stage will probably take you like 20 or 30 minutes, right? So a lot of game in this game. Competitive battleground shooter Catalyst Black, brought to you by the same exact team that brought you Vainglory. I had a ton of fun with this game, and I highly recommend people install this one on your phone, because this game remembers that it's a mobile game, right? It actually remembers that. There are so many other games out there, where you have to grind all day and auto repeat all day, or matches take like 30 or 40 minutes. Catalyst Black remembers that it's a mobile game with its drop in, drop out multiplayer. In this game, let's say you only have 5 minutes. You're on a bathroom break at work, right? You can drop into a match, play 5 minutes, get a bunch of kills, get rewarded based off what you contributed, and then drop out. There's no penalty for it whatsoever, and the game automatically drops someone in your place. So you don't really screw over your team either. Like true drop in, drop out multiplayer on a mobile platform, I think that's very smart. I think it works, and I think Catalyst Black, this game is great. A. Apex Legends Mobile is a game that I struggle to say anything bad about whatsoever. I feel like the worst thing that people say about Apex Legends Mobile is that, why don't you just play on PC? Like, that's like the worst thing people say about it. I really think they knocked it out of the park by making this game a hero-based battle royale. Like, there was a stretch of time on this channel where I played like 12 battle royale games like straight. Like, I played like all the battle royale games on mobile, and all of them ultimately feel kind of lonely. Even when you're in a squad, they kind of feel like empty and lifeless. Not Apex Legends. I think the heroes and all of the hero chatter just really make the game feel more alive and more fun to play in, and to give you that just one more game feel. Like, let me just queue up one more time. Apex Legends, fantastic game. That's gonna be the first S-tier game of 2022, Apex Legends Mobile. Like I said, the worst thing I can say about this game is that it's not the PC version. Like, that's the worst thing I can say about Apex Legends Mobile. Fantastic game. Next up, we have Time Defenders. This is a tower defense game brought to you by Vespa, the same company that brought you King's Raid. Now, this game starts off not giving the best first impression, but once you start getting around the middle of the game, it gets really, really good. And then towards the end, it kind of falls off again. You know, the stages towards the end kind of like devolve into just throw 1,000 enemies on the screen and just try to protect yourself, right? Like, the later stages aren't as creative as some of the mid-game stages. Not to mention the engine can't really keep up with the thousands of enemies that it wants to throw at you. So for me, I feel like this is the type of game that you just kind of play through once on normal and you pretty much experience everything. That's what I did. And you know, probably that's for the best, right? The game isn't doing fantastic in its home region, not really doing that great in global. So longevity wise, we're probably gonna see the end of this game sooner rather than later. But hey, if you like hero-based tower defense games, you really don't have a lot of options outside of Arc Knights. It's still definitely a playable experience, but I don't think it's any better than a C average. And last but certainly not least, my current main game, Counterside. I absolutely love this world, this aesthetic. You guys know me. Give me a sword and a laser gun in the same game. Like, those are the type of games I like. I gotta have my fantasy mixed with a little bit of future. I love the combat in this game. It's one of those rare games where I equally love PvE and PvP. Like, a lot of games out there, I really don't care too much for the PvP aspect. They're usually really not that fun. But even here in Counterside, even when I get smacked up by someone that either is just way stronger than me or spent more money than me, I'm like, dude, I got owned. Let me queue up again. Like, it has that queue up again for another fight, queue up again for another fight type of comeback feel. Not to mention the story is fantastic. The game just has content all over the place. Tons of content, great quality of life, an amazing setting, great combat in PvE and PvP, and not to mention us global launch players get the privilege to have our version directly published by the developer Studio B-Side. So overall, the global launch of Counterside I think is fantastic. I really struggle to say anything bad about Counterside. I guess if you twisted my arm to say some bad things about Counterside, I would say that the UI, the way they display all the different gameplay modes, is a little confusing. I think the game has way too many currencies and way too many shops, but that does not detract from the overall experience of Counterside. That is an easy S from FG. So that will do it for the April and May tier list. I hope to see you for just a June tier list, just a 1 month tier list. I would love to see it. My name is FG3000, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.